when you write a book, it's something that's going to be around for a long, long time. And so I wanted to be able to share my story to really be able to help inspire others. You know, the title is Against All Odds. The subtitle is A True Remarkable Story About How a Street Kid Became a Millionaire. And I really do believe this. It's not just words. I'm not just trying to sell a book. I honestly believe that if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Welcome to the Kind Boss podcast, brought to you by Outsourcing Angel, an Australian-based social enterprise that specializes in helping business owners free up their time and reduce staffing costs while helping to create employment opportunities for people in developing countries. Visit outsourcingangel.com today. Now, let me welcome your host, Linh Podetti.
Hello, kind listeners. I'm your host, Linh Podetti. Today, we'll be speaking to a kind boss, Jeffrey Lestz, CEO of Genistar, a UK-based entrepreneur with an inspiring rags to riches story. An orphan at the tender age of 8 years old, Jeff lived on the streets of Chicago in the US as a teenager. By the time he was 31, he became a millionaire. Jeff has built successful businesses in both the UK and the USA and has changed thousands of lives through his financial company. His mission is to help families and individuals to become debt-free and financially independent. Jeff is the author of True Riches, Prosperity with Purpose, and another book called A Journey to Financial Freedom, and his most recently published book, Against All Odds. His latest book is a powerful and inspiring book which tells his life story and journey from orphan to millionaire, which I've had the privilege to read and I love it so much. Listen on as he shares his inspiring story and shows you how anyone can turn their life around and become rags to riches. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Kind Boss podcast. And today I have a wonderful guest all the way from the UK, Jeffrey Lestz. Welcome. And now I met Jeff through Hillsong, my favorite new church that I found, and I became a new Christian. And I was so inspired by your quick little story, and then I was able to read your book called True Rich, and here you are. I'm so impressed, and I'm so excited to have you on board. So welcome.
Well, thank you. It's so good to be with you here on the other side of the world. And I'm just, I've been going through your other blogs that you've done and just so impressed really with what you've already created.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to start with talking about Genistar because I really, the audience that do listen to this, where a lot of us are business owners as well. And I do want to make this platform where kind people, sit, but then it's really about how can they also grow their business. So can you share with me how you started Genistar and what does it actually do right now and where is it going?
Yeah. So originally, I got recruited into a business model in the US that is now called Primerica. And this is some 39 years ago when I was 24 years old. And my wife and I went to one of their seminars. It was on financial education. I was in sales. She was a school teacher. And we were making a good income, but we didn't have a clue about money. And all of a sudden I go to this seminar, the CEO, his name was Art Williams, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, you mean ordinary people could actually become financially free? And so I started to work with the company on a part-time basis, started making a couple $1,000s a month part-time while I had my full-time job, fell in love with helping people, on their money. It's amazing, Lynn, that, we go through 14,000 hours of education before we ever get to university. And they don't teach us anything about money. We learned about Pythagoras theory, algebra, how to dissect a frog. Those are great life skills, aren't they? And so I fell in love with the business, worked my way up in that company. And at 24, I was broke. At 31, I'd become a millionaire, all through the lessons that I had learned at that company. Became a national sales director, went on to build a big business. And in the mid 90s, they were bought out by Citigroup. And then Citi eventually, they wanted Primerica, and Citi wanted to expand internationally. And I was chosen as one of the people to come to the UK in 2003, open up a new company. And we began to build that company for 4 years. And then 2007, the financial crisis hit and some other things happened. And Citi ended up basically saying, we don't want this division to be here any longer in the UK. So they pulled out. I started a brand new company called Genistar, along with some other founders in the company that we had met, and also a business partner who has since retired. But we started that in 2007, and that's really almost like the phoenix kind of out of the ashes of out of what was called Citi Solutions. We started Genistar, and we just felt like that we needed to deliver. We needed to stay here in the UK and deliver on our promise for people to still be able to achieve financial freedom through getting financial education.
Cool. So how does Genestar actually work? So like, is it for the consumers or everyday people to learn how to manage their money? Is there other people that you're also serving through your business model as well?
Yeah, it's interesting that not only here in the UK, but really around the world, what's happened is because of regulation and all of these extra requirements, here in the UK 30 years ago, there were 300,000 people selling financial services. Heavy regulation was brought in, and rightfully so, because many of them were mis-selling, products that, like cash value life insurance and endowments. And anyhow, so today in the UK now, even though the population is up some 20% for 30 years ago, instead of 300,000 people selling financial services, it's about 20,000. And those 20,000 really are what they call IFAs, independent financial advisors. They do a great job, but most of them, I'd say 98% of them, Lynn, are catering to that top 5% of the market. And if you can't write a check for $100,000 or $250,000 for an investment, they just don't want to deal with you. And so you've got the top 5% that are wealthy, the bottom 5% that are in poverty. It might be a little higher, but basically those are the two markets. And then you got the 90% of the people that are in that middle income market that are really underserved. And no one is really going out there and saying, hey, here's how money works. In the US and Canada, that's what Primerica does. They do a fantastic job. Here in the UK, to my knowledge, we're the only company that does this. And in the majority of other countries, like there in Australia, I've got loads of friends there I've talked to about this, and they said, hey, why don't you bring your business to Australia?
Yeah.
We'd love to have it here. And financial education is just so important. So what we do is basically this. When we approach people, and we work by referrals only. We don't cold call, we don't telemarket, we don't advertise. We believe that here's how we train our reps. If you have a happy customer and they love what you did for them, they'll give you referrals. And word of mouth, I think you would agree, word of mouth is the best form of advertising.
Yep.
And so we go in on our first call to people. We actually have a rule in the company that says you cannot make a sale or get a client on the first appointment. We don't want people feeling pressure. And so the first interview is just an educational interview to introduce them to all of the concepts that we teach about financial freedom. In fact, we actually have a book that I wrote called Your Journey to Financial Freedom. It's got the 10 key principles to really achieving, financial freedom. And then from that, we say, would you like to do a financial analysis? And then we do a financial analysis for them, totally free of charge. If they went to an accountant, financial advisor, they probably would charge them £1,000 to £1,500 for it. We do it for free and then bring it back to them with the understanding that if we can help them in the areas of, it could be insurance, it could be mortgages, investments, pensions, and then we have specialists in the company that are trained in those areas. So our reps are mainly introducers when it comes to the more complicated products like mortgages, investments, pensions, whereas our reps mainly handle the protection part. And then we refer everything else out for wills and trust. And again, the more complicated products. And we have currently a couple thousand Genistar associates that work for us all across the United Kingdom. And we have 66 different locations where we have what we call vice presidents, similar to a franchise. And these are people that have grown up in our system over the years that we've been here.
Wow. I'm so amazed, and I wish you do have it in Australia, because what I love is that you're helping the end consumers, people, to change their life, but then you're also giving opportunities, business opportunities to the reps to actually, they get to add value to others as well and earn money at the same time. So what would you say, I know one of your book was to teach the 10 tips around financial freedom. Are you able to share maybe the top few? Because I think a lot of us, we know how to make money, but we don't know how to keep the money. And I went through that and I know what it's like, but now of course I'm a lot more wiser. I wish I could turn back time, but can you share some quick tips? What are the challenges that you see most people have when it comes to money? And then what would you say the first few steps?
Yeah, I would say, Lynn, in the book, Your Journey to Financial Freedom, we, lay out the 10 principles. And let me just give you a couple. And they're so basic. They really are. I mean, I remember when I first saw some of these at Primerica 39 years ago, I was like, well, that's common sense, but it's not common knowledge. And if people do know it, it's not common practice. That's for sure. You hit on one of them just now, which is it's not what you make that counts. It's what you keep. Mm-hmm. I know people that are making $20,000 a year that have more money saved up than people making a six-figure income. The person making six figures probably just has bigger toys and bigger debts.
Yes.
A real key, it's not what you make that counts, it's what you keep. So have a budget. Get control of your finances. And I know that dreaded budget word has never been popular in my 39 years and doing this, but it just, nobody has an unlimited checkbook. Mm-hmm. I don't care how much money you make, you don't have an unlimited checkbook. The other thing would be, and let me just give you a little tip that I think might help, because I think it simplifies. It's a formula. I call it the 10-10-10-70 principle. Now I'm not telling people how to live their lives. I'm just telling you this is how I became a millionaire. This is how that I was trained, and this is what has worked for me and for literally millions of other people. Okay. The first 10% is I give. Now, I'm not here to give a talk on biblical finance, although I've written a book on it called True Riches. And so the first 10% of everything that I earn, whether it's my income from my business, book sales, or property sale, or whatever it is, the first 10%, I actually give that back to the church. It's called a tithe, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not telling you where to put it. I'm just telling you that the first 10%, I'm a real believer that if you want to receive, you should give. Mm-hmm. Okay, part of this is learning how to be generous. The next 10% goes into a short-term savings account. And then the next 10% goes in, and that first 10%, I would call it an emergency fund, okay? Mm-hmm. The next 10% goes into a long-term investment, could be your pension plan or any type of an investment, long-term account that is probably going to be more 5+ years down the road and maybe even longer, okay? Could even be that, you put it into property or whatever else it might be. Then the next 10% actually, so you got first 10% giving, next 10% is short-term, or the third 10% would actually be long-term. The next 70% is actually what you learn to live on. Mm-hmm. Now, I remember when I first heard this and I thought, well, that's never going to happen for me because right now I'm spending 110%. But it's all about having a game plan. It's like a sat nav, here's where you're at, here's where you're going. You got to have a plan on how to get there. And so that's kind of the goal of where you want to get to, 10-10-10-70 principle. Getting a good education about having the proper cover in place as far as life insurance, critical illness or serious illness cover, potentially health insurance, okay? And the reason that I'm such a big believer in insurance, number one, over the last 39 years, I've just seen it change people's lives totally, both not having it as well as having it. And it's not that, like life insurance, one of the principles I cover in that book, Your Journey to Financial Freedom, is you don't buy life insurance because you're going to die. You buy it because when you do die, other people have to go on living. My own personal story, I know we're going to get into that. My father had no life insurance, didn't have a will, didn't have anything set up. And all three of us kids, after my mother died a few years later, we all ended up in orphanages and foster homes. Now, I'm not saying that having money or having insurance or whatever would have kept my mother on the straight and narrow, but I know being thrust into poverty literally changed our lives, not for the good, but for the bad. So those are a couple of the key principles in there. And then, Lynn, I might just mention one other, and that is on the long-term investments, don't keep your money in a bank account in short-term savings where you're getting 0.1 or 0.25% or 1%. Get an education on how stocks and shares and investment funds and property work, because, guys, listen, learn the tips of how wealthy people actually operate. These are not, it's not rocket science. And anybody can get these principles if you just apply yourself.
Yeah, love it. The tips are amazing. Now, one of the question I have is, in Australia, I know a lot of friends, and even I was leading to this path of trying to buy more and more properties. And I remember going to my husband, what's our plan? And he's like, I want to buy 25 properties. And then, after I read your book, I kind of went, why? Why are we buying 25 properties? Why are we trying to get more debt and just accumulate these debt? So what is your, advice around kind of like, just pushing yourself to build your future wealth and stretching yourself and always owing the bank? Yeah. What's your advice on that?
I think it's so interesting because, again, it's one of the things that I always try to do is to never give advice, always give counsel. Every situation is different. I have a friend of mine here in the UK that he actually handles about half of my property portfolio. He personally owns 150 properties, manages another 150 properties for people like me. Okay?
Yep.
So in his case, that's what he does full time. And I saw how he built a property portfolio, and he leveraged it and really did it the smart way. And he had a particular model to do it in. I've seen other people that have leveraged themselves, and all of a sudden a tenant moves out and you miss 3 or 4 months income from that. And it just puts them in a tailspin and leads on to oftentimes bankruptcy or certainly some form of financial stress. Okay. I'm a little bit, years ago, there was a philosopher in the US, and here's what he said. He said, I'm not always interested in the return on my money. I'm interested in the return of my money. That was a guy called Will Rogers many, many years ago. And for me, someone asked me recently, they said, Jeff, would you like to become a billionaire? And I thought about it for a moment, and I said, wasn't on my bucket list, no. But I tell you what would really excite me, 1,000 million is a billion. So what I'd really like to do is I'd like to create 1,000 millionaires, because that would be a billion, and then I've passed on a legacy. Now, what's interesting is if you do that, you would end up becoming very wealthy yourself. But my personal philosophy, going back to the property business, has been this. You're absolutely right. You have to ask yourself the question, why? Why am I building this portfolio? Well, for most of us, it's because someday you probably want to get to the point where maybe you don't want to do what you're doing at your job. Now, I love what I'm doing. I've been doing it for, 40 years. And as long as I'm having fun, I'm going to keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Okay. If it ever becomes drudgery, I'll turn the reins over to someone else and that can take it on, better than me. But the reason I built a property portfolio is so that I can be financially free and I don't have to depend on a job, jump out of bed. You know, people don't want to have to jump out of bed. And so that's the reason that I build a property portfolio. And for me, this is the way that I've always done it. When I buy a property here in the UK, we're allowed to put it on what they call interest-only mortgages. So the mortgage might be $300 a month, but the rent might be $1,200 a month. I just take that $1,200, I apply it to the mortgage, and so I'm actually paying the mortgage down. And the majority, I'd say 75, 80% of my properties are totally paid off and mortgage free.
Yeah.
Okay? Every once in a while, if I find a really good deal, then I will remortgage a property, pull some cash out if I don't have the cash already, and I'll go leverage myself. You know, I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's just not right for me. I'm one of those guys, I like to sleep at night. You know, everybody tosses and turns because of worries, or might be the COVID-19 or what's going to happen in the future, my job or whatever. But I do not want to worry, you know, about properties.
Yeah. You made a really good point. And I think it's okay to invest and do it, whatever, but it's how you do it, how much stress you put yourself in and the risk that you do take. But, you know, the other point that I wanted to make is, you know, a lot of us, we want to build our wealth so that we could pass on to our children, so that our children doesn't have to go through the impoverished life like we did, let's say. But, you know, both me and you, both have experienced poverty, and it made us drive, made us motivated. It kind of put fire on our asses, right? And so the dilemma is like, you know, if you give your children everything, how will they have that lesson?
You know, and I've had a lot of people ask me that question. I think it's like anything, you know, and I'm going to go back to my Jewish upbringing, and it says it in the scriptures. I know we're not on here to teach about the Bible, but, you know, you can learn a lot from Jewish people. It's, you know, you and I have talked about this, you know, Lynn, that it's interesting that, you know, Jewish people prosper disproportionately to other groups of people. And if you want a great book, it's called Thou Shalt Prosper by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. Rabbi Lapin's incredible insight into this whole thing about wealth. And he talks about this, about the balance. But it's like anything in our lives. It's like eating. It's like sex. It's like, I mean, everything in its right place is beautiful. This holistic life. You know, everybody loves to eat. Most people love to eat. Do you eat to live, or do you live to eat? And you can go over the edge on that, just like with health. You can just, you know, go try to work out 9 hours a day, you know, and think about nothing else. So there's this balance in our lives. And I think that the key here is teach these things to your children and to your children's children. You know, there's a proverb says that a good person, a good man, or a good woman leaves an inheritance to their children's children, not just their children, but they got enough wealth to not just leave their kids, but also to their grandkids. And so the people that I've seen really, you know, you can learn from people that spoil the kids, and you can also learn from the people that bring their children up the right way to appreciate money. There was a study done, I don't know if you've ever read the book called The Millionaire Next Door.
Yeah, I think I have. Yeah.
Incredible book. And one of the writers, his daughter, has carried on the study. And it's interesting that most wealthy people, by the third or fourth generation, wealth has disappeared because they don't know how to handle it. It's all of a sudden it's thrust upon them, versus as you grow into it, it's like learning a relationship and a respect with money.
Yes.
And so, you know, when you haven't had to work for it, it becomes something you're kind of like, yeah, well, you know, mom will give me more, dad will give me more, grandpa, grandma. So I think that it's something that you have to really temper with the kids. I've seen so many great examples, seen so many bad examples, but I think I've actually seen more good examples than bad examples of people, as an example, that have money, but they say, okay, kids, I'm going to give you some money, but you need to do some chores around the house. It's not just here, here's, however much money. So the kids begin to appreciate, and they have a work ethic about them, and they're not being spoiled.
Good point. Yeah, that's a very holistic approach, because I think sometimes I'm thinking too black and white, don't give them too much, or maybe give them a little bit. What you're saying is that you could still, whether or not it's a lot or less, it's about the way you teach them, because more money really exposes who you are, or you can do more good things with it, or, more money could turn someone bad, but it really is that education. Okay, so before I go into my next segment, which I want to go into your book, I want to go through this thing called the high five. I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you just have to choose between this or that choice and elaborate a little bit so we get to know Jeffrey a little bit, okay? They're very simple questions. All right, number 1, do you prefer Mondays or Fridays?
Mondays. Actually, that's the reason why.
Monday
morning leaders meeting. I love every Monday morning with our company, across the company. It's open to all of our associates, and we record it. So, if they're at work, because we have a lot of part-timers. But I love creating leaders and the synergy of passing on the baton and passing it forward and helping them to get the same gift of leadership and teaching and education that I got over the past years. So yeah, I would say Mondays.
Yeah.
I love every day, but I got to tell you, Sunday nights, I get excited about Monday morning. Most people are kind of like, oh man, Monday, but I get very, very excited about Mondays.
Yeah, yes. When you get to do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. I agree. Okay, so second one, if you prefer holiday in Fiji or holiday in Italy?
Well, I've never been to Fiji before, but my wife and I love Italy, one of our favorite places. We had a home on the south coast of France, right in Nice, right next to Italy. So I would say, because I've never been to Fiji, I'd like to go to Fiji.
Yeah, my husband finally went to his own country 3 years ago. So after he was 40, I said, you have to go to your own country. It's like a disgrace not to be there, but I love Italy. Yeah, it was amazing. All right, third question. Do you prefer to be in your 30s or your 40s?
I would say actually my 30s, because I think I was just coming into, all of a sudden 31, I became a millionaire and just starting to kind of wake up to this whole self-improvement and the opportunities. But I mean, yeah, I would say 30s.
Wow, I agree. I'm not in my 40s yet, but I am really loving my 30s, because I feel like I'm finally like an adult now. Like before, I was so childish, but yeah.
Also, Lynn, if you don't mind me adding this, I try to stay in the mindset of my 30s, because I think that I'm one of these, man, life is an adventure and age is all up here. Now, I understand it can be in the bones also, okay, and arthritis and all that. But I just have this thirst and this quest to lay it all on the field. And when I'm 107 years old or whatever age it is, when I'm, when life is over, I want to be able to go, I gave it my all. And I think that when I was in my 30s, I just, I've always had loads of energy. But when I got in my 30s, I think all of a sudden it was the realization that, wow, the world truly is my oyster. It really is. I can actually plan my future here. And if I just go do the hard work and the grafting, I can pretty much achieve anything I want to.
Yeah, I love that. Wow. Yeah, I can't wait to go to my 40s and see if I agree with you if my 30s was the best, but it is so far. All right, the fourth one, hope or surrender?
Definitely hope.
No surrender.
Hope and no surrender.
Yeah, wow, amazing. All right, finally, properties or shares?
That one's a little bit like asking me, do I want chocolate or vanilla? And I would say, yes, I'll take a scoop of each. Well, I can tell you this, that I did not build my original wealth with property. I built it in investment funds, not me trying to guess which stocks to buy. And then as I built that portfolio up, then I started taking lump sums out and buying property with a deposit from that and continued to invest into that. That was just what I did. So yeah, I don't know. I would say investment funds, because that's where most people need to start. And that's where I got started.
Okay. Since investment funds not here, properties win then. right? Because the two choices were property or shares. I get the point. Thank you so much for answering those 5 questions. Here's the exciting part, your book. So when you gave me a copy of your All Against Odds, I couldn't believe it was like reading a movie. And I told you I wanted to be a movie star, so I get this whole movie game. And so when I was reading it, it was just as if like I was going through your life, and I just couldn't believe how much bad luck you had when you were a kid. So can you kind of tell me, why did you decide to write this book?
Yeah, so let me just, maybe Lynn, what might be helpful is maybe if I give a little bit of the backdrop.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it ties into the business that I'm in and really my life and my purpose. And so I grew up in a Jewish family in Chicago. Both sets of grandparents were immigrants from Russia in the early 1900s, late 1800s, Orthodox, kept kosher. And my parents really rejected that way of life. My father was in the Army, Air Corps, World War II, in fact, stationed in Italy. And then after the war, they got married and they had 3 children. My father was a very motivated guy. He had learned the printing and photography business. He was working for a company, plus he had his own business on the side. And this is in the early 1960s. They had 3 children, which I was the baby. And my father and mother just started overspending, back before it was popular. And they got overextended. He had a nervous breakdown, lost his job, lost his business, bankrupt, lost everything, the house, car, moved into a little 2-bed apartment in the city of Chicago. And he was in and out of a mental hospital for probably 3 to 5 months. And when they let him out the second time, he actually committed suicide. Mm-hmm. Left my mother with 3 small kids, 11, 7, and 5. And she had a nervous breakdown, became alcoholic, became a drug addict. And after 2 years, we were taken away from my mother. And my brother was put in a boys' home. My sister and I were put into a foster home, eventually an orphanage. And then we were split up. And so from my age, and then she died when I was 8 years old. So she died a year after I was in the orphanage. And then, so really from my age 7 until I was 13, I was in and out of 5 different homes. And at age 13, I had just had enough. I'd gotten in a gang. I got into trouble, was just starting to do light drugs, marijuana and smoking and, drinking, and got into some trouble. And I attempted suicide. I'm not proud of it, but I just, I said, I've had enough. So I got locked up in a mental institution at 13 years old. I got to say, the worst experience I've ever had in my life. This is like a proper Jack Nicholson, One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest type movie, I mean, where it was horrible. And after a couple of months, I ran away, lived on the streets of Chicago until I was 15 years old. Got into drugs, started selling drugs, in a gang, and just, really a messed up life. And at 15 years old, I hitchhiked to see some friends on a hippie commune. And when I got there, these guys had all straightened up their lives. These were the drug dealers I had met in Chicago about a year earlier. And they'd all changed their lives. I walked in on them late one night, and they invited me to join them. Turns out they were having a Bible study, which I thought they were all crazy. And I actually asked one of the guys, I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "We're having a Bible study." And I said, what have you guys been smoking this time?" I ended up going to church with them, ended up getting saved, and it changed my life at 15 years old. I mean, it was just a total turnaround in my life. And went back to high school, met Margot, who's my wife now. She was the only other hippie in the high school, and we fell in love with each other's ponytails. And went through high school, became an honor student, went to university for a couple of years, and then I got into the insurance business and ended up, doing well in sales and management, was kind of climbing the corporate ladder. And then at 24, that's where I met the company I mentioned earlier that was originally called A.L. Williams, now called Primerica. And all the principles and the leadership there just changed my life, Lynn. And 24 years old, I was broke. 31 years old, had become a millionaire. And it really just, I mean, that's sort of some backdrop of my life. But really, I mean, the first 15 years were a flipping disaster. I mean, it would be like, I mean, how could a kid even survive that? And even as I read the book myself, sometimes I have to pinch myself and go, man, that was like a nightmare. But thank God that I came through it. And I don't know if you've ever heard this, but if you want a great testimony, the first thing you got to have is a great test. And that's really what that was for me.
So why now? Like, what made you decide, okay, I'm going to lay out all my life right now and share it with the world?
Well, it's been something I've wanted to do for a long time. I'd say at least 5 years. It's listen, I don't think I'm an old guy, but I'm in my early 60s now, and I would love to be able to leave a legacy behind. When you write a book, it's something that's going to be around for a long, long time. And so I wanted to be able to share my story to really be able to help inspire others. The title is Against All Odds. The subtitle is A True Remarkable Story About How a Street Kid Became a Millionaire. And I really do believe this. It's not just words. I'm not just trying to sell a book. I honestly believe that if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah. What would you say that made your life turned out different? Because, obviously a lot of us or a lot of people out there have had bad upbringing, and then their life goes to worse, and it's because they had a bad upbringing. And then there's people like yourself, and even me included, I relate so much with you in terms of I became suicidal, single mom, all that stuff. But there was something in me that said, I am not going to fail. Like, as in, I'm failing right now and I'm not going to fail. But I said that to myself. I could have chosen. Any reason why you may think we chose to think that way? Or did you think the same way as I did?
Yeah, well, Lynn, I mean, again, at 13, I did attempt suicide. I mean, and I wasn't just trying to get attention. I mean, I slashed both of my wrists and arms, and, if my foster father hadn't found me, and broken the door down, something, just sort of a still small voice told him, go check on Jeff. We'd gotten into an argument, and they'll read about it in the book. I mean, I wouldn't be here today. 13 years would have been it. And so I didn't just think about it. I attempted it. Now, in retrospect, boy, was that ever dumb. But I was hurting. I can try to justify it. And of course, teenage suicide is such an issue, today. And then at 15 years old, after living on the streets and going through a couple of Chicago winters and, you're discouraged, you're in despair. Hey, listen, I got to tell you, I was on the edge of suicide, attempted suicide again. And this time I was going to make sure that it worked. And so for me, what changed my life was seeing the change in my friends' lives. And I thought, wow, I want that. I want what those guys have in their life. Now, I got to tell you, when they told me it was God, I was like, transcendental meditation or whatever, then I would have been cool with it. But all of a sudden, it's like, please, guys, don't tell me about Jesus, okay? And as I began to really look at my life, I began to say to myself, I've really messed my life up. And what if this is the answer for me? Now, one of the things I had to overcome was I was Jewish. And so I said to these guys, guys, I'd never believe in Jesus. I'm Jewish. And they said, well, Jesus is Jewish. And I said, no, he's a Catholic, isn't he? I mean, I didn't know anything about where he came from. And so the night that I accepted the Lord into my life, I can't explain it. All I can tell you is just like that, I was delivered from drugs. Now, I know people that had to go through drug rehab, okay? And there's a different journey for everybody. But for me, I'm just telling you, that was the thing that changed my life. Now, is there a backdrop behind that story? Yeah, you better believe it. Loads and loads in here, several chapters on, it took one night to get the street kid out of Chicago.
Yeah.
But it took about 3 to 5 years to get Chicago out of the street kid. and it was a process. It was definitely a process.
What do you think your attitude or the personality that you had that helped you change your life, right? Like, was it already that this kind of a passionate kind of person, or that kind of, hardworking person, you just weren't given the chance? Like, what would you say some of your qualities that made you survive through that or thrive?
I don't like people to pull what I call the God card. Okay. I acknowledge God in my life, but I can tell you this, God's not going to do everything for you. And so I would say even that the number one thing was desire to want to change. Knock and the door will be open to you, but you've got to be the one to do the knocking. You got to ask and you will receive. Seek and you'll find. But first it starts with you. And that was the thing that I had, was desire to want to change. I mean, I really, in fact, a couple weeks before I ended up on the hippie commune, I actually cried out to God. And here's what I said. I said, God, I don't even know if you're alive. In fact, I really don't believe you are. Why should I at that point in my life? What a crummy life. Okay. In fact, I felt like if there was a God, he was picking on me. And I said, God, if you're real, help me get my life straightened out. So that was the beginning, was the desire, the asking, the knocking, the seeking. Okay.
So what did you think that made you, the qualities you already had in you as a kid, even though you're going through challenges, maybe there was something in you already, the characteristics.
Absolutely. Yeah. They say by the time that you're 5 years old that the majority of your personality traits have already developed. And I would say that's very, very true. I know that for me, as an example, I always loved making people laugh. I always had a sense of humor. Now, later in my later years, I learned that my father was a real joke teller. And so I don't know if that was in my DNA or what it was, but I love to make people laugh. And my wife always says, she says, Jeff, what got you through the tough times was having a sense of humor and looking at life and going, okay, the glass isn't half empty, it's half full, and here's a joke to go with it. So I think that was one thing. I think that the second thing is boy, I didn't have a chip on my shoulder at 13. I had a couple chips on both shoulders. And at 15 years old, I still had those chips. But all of a sudden, I had two mentors, my foster father and the pastor in the church that we got involved in. And both of these men, man, they just took me under their wings. They loved me. I'm not saying we didn't have some of these moments, because we had these moments, okay? All of a sudden, I began to bring my defenses down, Lynn, and I began to realize that my history did not have to become my destiny, but I needed to become coachable. I needed to allow some wisdom into my life, and I wasn't going to get there on my own. And so I began to trust in people that had my best interest at heart. And all of a sudden, I just laid my ego aside, and I said, I may not be the smartest guy in the world, but I'm a pretty good copycat, and I'm going to do what they tell me to do.
Yeah. And like the saying goes, when the student's ready, the teachers come, right? Did you feel like every moment of the time when you were ready, people just came in to help you along the way?
Yeah, I would say sometimes, the teacher came before I was ready.
And that's when it didn't work? It kind of like bounced off?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I had some very good patient teachers with me that were kind of like, okay, kid, once you have your little kitty fit over here, okay, then come on back and we'll work through this. So yeah, I was a very emotive person and would just kind of fly off the handle. I remember the first day in school, I was in biology class and the teacher comes in. I mean, I'm a brand new kid. I got hair down to here. I'm the only hippie in the high school. I'm a street kid. And I'm talking, and the teacher comes in, taps on the desk and says, quiet class. Everybody else sits up in their class. I'm over there continuing to talk. And, anyhow, I mouth off to her. I get sent to the principal's office. And I'd say in the first 3 to 5 months, I was in the principal's office more than I was in the classrooms.
Wild child. Who would have want a son like you?
Thank God for teachers,
Yeah.
so they were just so loving and so patient. They got aggravated at me, but yeah, it's just, the principal, the teachers, really that whole community. It was a little village called Elkville in Southern Illinois, population like 800, 900 people. The whole village there, they didn't know how to react to all these hippies moving in the late 60s, early 70s. But I think because I was a kid, because I was a teenager, they're kind of like, okay, we're going to give this kid a chance. It really helped change my life. The whole atmosphere of being in a rural community versus being in a concrete jungle in the city.
Yeah, amazing. So when is your book out and how will people be able to buy it? Because I seriously, I'm not even joking. It's one of the best books. And I told you that it should be in a movie and you are saying it will. It's looking like it will be in a movie too, right?
Well, we're talking to a couple of movie producers now and some other script writers and things that have approached us. And so I don't know if it's going to take 5 years like it did the book or not, but yeah, hopefully someday if the book does well, maybe we'll turn it into a movie or a documentary. So the book is out on Amazon against all odds, and you can kind of see it up here on the screen. And the best place to obtain it is on Amazon. Against all odds. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is that the CEO of the company I mentioned, earlier, Primerica, the former CEO and founder of that company, Art Williams, I've stayed friends with him now for almost 40 years. He did the foreword for me. And I got to say, Lynn, I think one of the things that I've really done well, and one of the things, I don't know why, maybe it's because I never had a real family there, is I always have tried to really stay in touch with people, and even like the guy that was the head of the orphanage when I was 10 years old. I'm still friends with him today.
Amazing. Wow. Okay. Well, so you said the book is already out, is it? That people can grab it now?
The book is out. They can get it on Amazon in your country, wherever you're at. Would appreciate you, reading it and write a review, good, bad, or ugly. Okay.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. All right. I have 2 more questions before I let you go. I could sit here all day talking to you because you've got so many years of experience ahead of me. I want to learn. Well, actually, I have another one before I ask my last 2. With the 40 years or 39 years that you've been in business, what would you say, I guess, like a takeaway for entrepreneurs or business owners like myself to go, here's what I've learned about business. Boom. I don't know if you can wrap it in one kind of advice, but like something that we could kind of use as a guide.
Yeah. I always refer to some of my mentors in business, and I'll never forget one of my mentors, a guy by the name of Bob Stafford Sr., who was in Primerica. I asked him that same exact question. And Bob said to me, he said, Jeff, when I was 21, I asked that same exact question to a friend of mine. And here's what he told me. And I hope your listeners will write this down. He said that this guy told him, he said, find an expert in whatever it is that you want to do and do exactly what they tell you to do. And Bob said to him, great, I'll do exactly what you tell me to do. You're my mentor. And that guy mentored Bob, and he became a multimillionaire. As I sat there with Bob, I remember it was in a steakhouse. I was 24 years old. And I said, Bob, you're my mentor. You're my expert. I'll do exactly what you tell me to do. And then if I fail, it's your fault. I know that sounds crazy, but because so many times people think an entrepreneur means I need to go have my own idea. But I got to tell you, the reason that I've got the Genistar model, the reason that we've done so well in our business isn't because of Jeff Letz's genius. I'm just a good copycat. Now, we've had to anglicize it to fit the country that we're in. But even in my book, I dedicate it to the company that really gave me my foundation. And I think that's another key, Lynn, is not only to continue to have good relationships, but to be grateful for the mentors and the people that helped you on your journey.
Wow. Love that advice, because it does. I think it's the one key that will lead us to any success we want. Amazing. Okay. Last two questions. Since this is the Kind Boss podcast, I usually ask my guests, what does a kind boss mean to you?
You know, Lynn, I never really think of myself as a boss. I think of myself more as a friend and as a mentor. Now, I know in the corporate world, they say, you know, you got to keep your distance, and your employees and people are out here and, you know, live your life in a little bit of a bubble, you know, and because you're up here. You know, I'm just a real firm believer in the golden rule: do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. The reason I became an entrepreneur is because I didn't like having a boss. You know, where I always prospered and grew the best was when people educated me and helped me. And it's kind of like training wheels. You know, remember when you were a kid or your children, you have bicycle and they got these little training wheels and the kids are learning. And all of a sudden, you know, you take the training wheels off when they're ready and then the kids can ride on their own. Well, to me, that really is what having both employees and also our associates who are self-employed, okay, is to really, to me, it's about building a team. And it's about helping people find the right seat on the bus that they should be in and helping to find out what their gift is. Because if you can use people, and I don't mean use people, but I mean, you know, help them to find what their gift is so that they operate in their natural gift. I'm gonna quote a proverb: train up a child in the way that they should go and they'll not depart from it. I believe part of what that means in ancient Jewish wisdom is to find out what your kids' gifts are, train them in that area. Okay. Like for me, it was people skills. I mean, I've never been intimidated about going on stage, and, you know, like yourself, you know, you're a natural, you're going to be a great actress because it's part of your gift. Okay. And if we could just learn how to train people in business and find out what their gifting is, are they good administrators? See, my gift is I'm a communicator. Man, I am great at stirring up a mess, but please do not put me in administration. You know, I have oversight over compliance and all these other technical areas, but I have competent people in those areas. And it truly is about teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah.
You cannot build a team, you know, if you're trying to be, in my opinion, if you're just trying to be the boss. But if you're allowing others to grow, take the lid off and let people grow and have their opportunity, to me, that's really what a kind boss is helping others to grow, whether they stay with you or whether they go on to something else.
Yeah, so inspiring. So I agree everything you said, except the part that I was a natural non-shy person. So I was actually very, very shy and I tried to kind of not be shy, and then I end up enjoying this new journey. So I wasn't like you. I was actually very scared of people. But yeah, everything you said, yeah, was perfect.
I'll say this: in getting to know you over the last several weeks, and to me, I mean, you're very natural. So you're right. It's training, but it goes back to this whole thing about desire, you know? And again, I'm such a believer, and that's the reason I believe that this book will help inspire people.
Yep.
That what it'll do is it will help them to believe, wow, if this kid off the streets of Chicago that had nothing, I mean, everything going against me, that's the reason it's called Against All Odds.
Yeah, it's so amazing. Last question for you. What do you want the world to remember Jeffrey for?
You know, the name of our company, Genistar, is two words. Gen came from the word Genesis, which means creation or the beginning. The word star came from our team name from my mentor in the States. His team name was Superstars. And you take those two, put them together, it means the creation of leaders. And I hope someday when I'm like this, and hopefully people are shedding a few tears, but I hope it's a celebration And I hope that the thing that the discussion is this is, man, that guy changed my life. Whether it was reading a book or whether it was getting coaching from us, he helped me to go and become a great leader. See, I can look back on my life now, Lynn, and I can look at people like Art Williams, Bob Safford, Lloyd Tomer. These are names that I mentioned in the book. John Maxwell, who's a great teacher on leadership. I know John. He's been an incredible, incredible teacher and friend. I can look back on my life and say, these people, they changed my life. I mean, some of them, it might have been like Jim Rohn. Have you ever heard of Jim Rohn?
Yeah, of course.
I met Jim 35 years ago. We weren't best friends, but I met him. But I studied his material and I digested it, and the wisdom that he's got literally changed my thinking from listening to greats like this. So at my funeral, I want it to be a celebration. And I want him to sing that song by John Fogerty called "Put Me In, Coach."
Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, you are so inspiring. Thank you so much for spending time with me. We already even had a long chat before this podcast as well. So thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you, Lynn.
Humbleness.
It's been an honor. And again, I want to congratulate you on all of your success. And I really believe this for you, Lynn, and your life and what you're going to be building, you and your family. The best is yet to come.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for joining our podcast today. We hope this interview has inspired and humbled you to be a kind boss. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what you think about our show. If you have any questions, please visit outsourcingangel.com. Until then, stay kind and spread love.